Hey guys, how are you doing today? I'm covering more of Chapter 16 Theory. I know I'm doing this in baby bites, but honestly, in the real world, when we do Phase 1, I do this for 7 days almost. So it's broken up a little bit differently. So far, we've done 2 pieces of theory and 2 haircut demos. I have more haircut demos to go. Today, I want to cover consultation and cutting tools. Homework, we need to still be working on that. There's a lot of vocabulary words, lots of questions. Also, test yourself and your knowledge in your exam review book. So you can test yourself and see how you're comprehending the knowledge that you'll need to know when we finally do a test. But this is more than about a test to me. This is about your future career in haircutting. So all this information I feel is super important to be able to be a good cutter. Unfortunately, it's a little hard for you and I to do hands-on together, but eventually we will once everything gets back. So we talk about consultation. We do that for every service. We need to talk to the customer about her wants, his wants, their desires, their wishes. So a lot of that is either visual, they'll show me photographs, which is my favorite thing, or they will tell me. The main thing I hear all the time is my stylist never listens. So I always want to look my guest in the eyes. They can see me listening to them. Also, during the consultation, I never touch their hair. I can do that when they finish speaking. If you're tapping on the top of their head, it's really hard to think, okay? Also, my customer will tell me non-verbally a ton of stuff. She'll tell me where her reference points are. She tells me where it's too bulky, where she has problem areas in styling, all those things that I can demystify later. Like I said, I love pictures. I can take 2 pictures and make them 1. I can do anything we want, and it's a great communication tool. Do you want it this short? Do you want it stacked this high? You know, just different things like that. How would you like this to be different? Those are all important. Also, too, in the consultation, I want to look at their face shape. We talked about this in 14. The ideal facial shape is oval, and it is 1.5 times taller than it is wide. What we are trying to do is make all the face shapes appear to be oval. If they don't want that, then we're emphasizing their face shape, which is a whole other story. And at the end of the day, it is their haircut, but it's my job also to educate them on what might be more flattering, to de-emphasize a facial flaw or something like that, or make flatter some other facial feature. So that's part of my job. At the end of the day, they can still say, no, I want this haircut. But we've talked about it. Also, now that I've talked to them about this, I want to do a thing called reflective listening. I'm going to tell them what I heard so that they can say, no, that's not what I said, or yes, that's perfect. But at least they know, A, I was listening, and B, we're on the same page. I will actually do this debriefing also after I finish the haircut. I'll show them the back of the haircut. Did we stack it enough? Did we swing it enough? Is it short enough? I will ask these questions so next time I can remember other little things I might want to do, or let her know that I was listening and I got the job done. So it's something I usually do with my guests. Even if I've seen my guests like a gajillion times, I still want to give some sort of consultation. I want to double check because people do want change. People do get bored with us. So one of the reasons they leave us is A, we don't listen, or B, they're just tired of the same old thing. So sometimes I'll say, hey, let's do a little something different here or do that. So anyways, that's consultation in terms of visual and verbal. But also now I'm going to analyze the hair. I'll analyze the haircut, but also I want to analyze a thing called texture. And I think of hair texture being fine, medium, or coarse, but I think of it as a fabric fiber. And I think about this texture when styling, shampooing, cutting, because you're not going to throw a silk blouse in a hot dryer, for example. So, or chemicals are going to happen faster on fine hair than it would coarse hair. So I'm going to always keep the texture in mind. So we've got fine hair, medium hair, and coarse hair. So that would be a thread of silk, cotton, or burlap. It's the diameter of the individual hair. You can also feel the texture. Coarse hair is kind of wiry. This hair, you don't want to put a lot of use the texturizing shears on, or it'll stand up, or it'll kink funny. Also, if you have really coarse hair or coarse, dense hair, which we'll talk about in a minute, you may want to take smaller partings. Another thing we talk about in the analysis is the diameter of the density of the hair. The density is how many hairs are there per square inch. So if a girl comes in with a ponytail this big, she got a lot of hair. There's other people that have 15 hairs to make into a hairstyle. They don't have a lot of density. We need to pay attention to this. Also, too, in our analysis, we want to talk about growth patterns. Do they have swirls and whirls in the cowlick or in the crown area? Because I will cut that differently. Are there growth patterns in the back that's going to disturb our bob or their pixie? I have a growth pattern right here. If you don't cut my hair correctly, it will head this way while everybody else is heading that way. So those are things we want to talk to our customer about or see what happens in the analysis of the hair pattern. Also, too, we want to talk about hair pattern. Is it straight? Is it wavy? Is it curly? Is it extremely curly? Because I'm going to cut each of those types differently, and I may use certain tools on those hair types and not on the other. I'm going to turn over to page 370. We have a number of different cutting tools. I saw a video the other day. Some guy used a samurai sword to cut a swing bob. A little bit of an overkill, but it did cut the hair. So the first thing we have are shears, and I have some different shears here on my table. Basically, shears cut a straight line. We hold the hair up, and it cuts a straight line. Whoop. The only way you get a difference is if you point cut the hair or cut into the hair. Okay? Sorry, got my girl here. So I wanted to show you this. So basically, once I close the shears, it's going to cut a straight line. The other way would be pointing into the hair, and you will get that. So we have the shears. We have what's known as texturizing shears. You will notice it looks like a little comb and a little blade. What happens is, whatever hair is touching the tooth of the comb, of the shear, when the blade comes down, it cuts that hair. All the hairs inside these little grooves are left uncut. So this is used more to debulk the hair. It's used to blend the hair. And you can see in this little diagram here what that's going to look like. So you put like little internal layers in there. If you put the shears diagonally, you're going to get a different effect. It's not great to cut off length. It's better to blend, debulk, things like that. Another tool we have is a razor. And razors give us a softer cut. Basically, it's cutting the hairs on a diagonal. Also, it's cutting at different lengths because we don't have the same type of tension we do when we hold our fingers. The fourth is clippers, and they cut very short haircuts. The blades are going back and forth and cut all the hair basically at the same length. So a couple different things here with the clippers. And if you ever see this on a test, clippers are really created for short taper fades. I can get an extremely short haircut with shears, texturizers, and a lot of other methods. I cannot get a fade. I cannot get a ball fade until I use my clippers. The clippers come with this handy dandy lever. If I have the lever closed and no guard, I have bald. If I open the blade, I get a little wiggle room. And then it comes with all these blades. In this, we don't think about inches. We are talking about 1/8 inches, millimeters, very, very small amounts with the blades and the opening and closing. That's how we get the blend or the blur in that. And it's its own little art form of using the clippers. Also, we have another tool called the trimmers. The trimmers are great to do all the edge up work, all the detailing work. I can come in around the ear, clean it up. I can clean up the neck things like this. A lot of times in different haircuts, we will also use these with different combs. For example, this is a clipper comb, so I could hold the hair up and cut the hair across here. If you notice, the clipper blades and the comb are the same size. So this comb in your kit is not a detangling comb, it is actually for your clipper. A lot of times in my men's hair cutting, I will use my trimmers and the trimmer comb, and I will do a lot of cleanup to blur the edges, especially on gray hair that leaves a lot of scissor marks. Sometimes I'll use those with my texturizers. Talking about combs, one thing I always want to use is an all-purpose comb, and here are 3 different versions. These came with your kits. I tend to use the pale colored one when I'm using dark hair. I will use a dark comb when I have blonde hair. This is also an extremely long all-purpose comb. Some people like these that have larger hands, some people don't. Basically, notice you have 2 different sets of teeth on this. Less tension, especially for curly hair, more tension. This is, you can detangle the hair, then put tension on the hair. So you've got 2 different choices, and this is why I do not use a rat tail comb to cut with, because I only have the 1 tension to use. So usually I use this for roller sets, styling, all sorts of other things. In your cut, there was a comb with a large spacing between the teeth. This is the one I will use for curly hair. I don't want to put a lot of tension on that curl, or it will spring load back at me. There's also 2 super small combs. They're thinner in diameter, I believe, or distance, but they are meant for barbering combs. These go in tight little crevices where I can do scissor over comb, texture over comb. So these are really meant for more barbering techniques or extremely short haircut techniques. And like I said, there's a lot of times I will do extremely short hair and I will never pick up the clippers. But I will do that with shears and texturizers, which a lot of times is my preference. But everybody's got their own method that they like to use. There's different sectioning clips. Some are long, like alligator clips. Some are the clamps. Those will be your decision to use as you start moving along. We talk about the shears and the texturizers. They're made of steel. They're usually made in Japan and Germany, and they have a rock wool hardness. If they're too hard, they'll shatter. If they're not hard enough, they won't hold a sharp edge. So knowing that is important. Shears are made 2 different ways. They're cast in a mold. They have a little mold. They put hot molten steel in there, and it sets. These are usually inexpensive shears. Sometimes there's bubbles. They're not great. They're good for people that cut their kids' hair or their own hair like once a month. They're not meant for salon use, really, where we're using over and over and cutting every day, you know, and things like that. Shears for us are more forged. It's almost like hammered steel, like a sword, and they have a convex or a concave blade. So, and they hold their hardness or their sharpness a lot longer. So we probably want to buy a nicer forged shear. We talked about parts of the shear the other day, and I brought some different shears here, and I'm going to post those on your thing. This is the tang where our pinky goes. Our ring finger goes here. Our thumb will go there. For you lefties, it will be just the opposite, and I didn't show you that on the demo the other day, but there's for your left-handed guys. And I know that seems weird if you're used to cutting fabric or paper. So those are your shears. They talk about different things in terms of maintenance. You received a shear set the other day when you checked in your kit. There's a little vial of oil in there. You probably want to oil your shears once a day. I take mine apart once a week, go in, clean the hair out, clean all that out. So I want to do daily cleaning and lubrication. I want to adjust my tension. There's a little, some shears have a knob to tighten them, or there's a little tool that looks like a Ninja Death Star. Basically, my shears should not close. If they flop open and down, they're too loose and they'll bend the hair. If they're too tight, they grind. So when I start my day, I make sure I've got some sort of gap in there, and you'll feel them if they're grinding. And if they're grinding, you're going to lose some of your sharpness on them. I clean them and I disinfect them after every client. Some people if you use the Barbicide, please do not leave it in there more than 10 minutes. It will rust your shears. There are times I will use the Clippercide to flush them out. It's antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, antituberculocidal. It's the same way you would clean your clippers, because you definitely do not want to immerse these in water. You can immerse them in blade wash. You're only going up to the blades and it's throwing all the little hair out. But do not put this major casing in water. You've destroyed your clippers. But the Clippercide also I'll use in my shears, especially in between guests if I'm running behind, don't have time to soak it for 10 minutes. And like I said, don't leave it too long. You will rust your shears, and that's not a good thing. How often do I sharpen my shears? It's when I need it. Usually as you go along, you keep buying nicer shears. The nicer shears I send back to the manufacturer. It keeps the warranty. Most of my shears have a lifetime warranty. I want to keep it, so I send it to the manufacturer to sharpen it correctly. But I don't do it until they need it. If you notice, I have several shears on the table, so I have several so that when I send a pair off, I've got my backup pair. So basically, as I've gone along in my career, my first shears, then I bought a nicer pair of shears, then I kind of keep upgrading and all that. My recommendation to you when you buy, see if you can buy a set, like a shear and a texturizer and a razor, and they all come together as a package. It's a very great way to get a value, and then buy your individual shears that you need for different things. And there's, different people have preferences on different shears. They talk about the different grips, and this is not as ergonomic because your thumb is pulling back. So there are thumb holes that are offset. This is much more ergonomic. There are thumb holes that swivel. So this means you can turn your hand any which way and your thumb moves. These are super ergonomic. I just got these and I splurged, but I can go different ways and turn and pivot, and I don't get as much twisting and going on my wrist because my thumb pivots. There are different texturizers. I don't know if you can see these real close. These are chunkers. So if I want choppy rock star haircuts, I've got these. The texturizing teeth in these are closer together, so they're great blenders. These are great debulkers. So they will do different things. Okie dokie. One thing you want to do is make sure your shears fit properly. If your fingers are going all the way through and your thumb is going all the way through, you may want to put the rings in there properly. Okay? So that will help out a lot, because if your hands aren't in the proper placement, that is going to be a problem. When you're buying shears, ask about that service agreement, ask about warranties, analyze the costs. Some shears sound expensive, but if you do the breakdown of how many haircuts you're going to do a day, plus your cost of your haircut, you will find that they may not be as expensive as you think, and the nicer shears last longer. You don't have to have them serviced as often, but you know what your finances are and what you're willing to spend once you get out in the salon. The ones you got in your kit are great for school. There's a pair for the mannequins. There are a pair for the customers. They're a great pair of shears to learn on. And as you go along, you'll just go up the ladder of what you like and what you want. Great. That's covering a whole lot of territory in your book. You can see the ring things on 377 and on 375 if you're having problems with your fingers going through the holes. We talked about the other day holding your shears properly. So a couple things here, and some things someone did not teach me as I went along, but I tend to clack. So both hands are moving. Not great. I want to get to the point my thumb just moves. Also notice my wrist is in a neutral position. I started a long time ago cutting like this and twisting my wrist, and that's not a great thing. So you want to keep your hand as in neutral a position as possible. It feels weird, but what happens a lot of times is the cutting blade is pushing the hair, and it's pushing in the direction you want the hair to go. So that's something important to remember, and all the ergonomics of this. A lot of you guys are really super young, and I want you to have a really long career in cutting hair without doing damage to this area of your hand. We talked about another thing the other day in palming the shears. Here's what a lot of times happens if we don't palm the shear stays open, and when we lift or do something, we cut ourselves, we cut somebody else, we accidentally cut some hair. So there's a thing called palming the shears. That means that the thumb hole goes inside on your palm, and you now have 2 fingers available to comb the hair. So I'm not setting my shears down, which is time wasting. This is also something on the state board that they grade you on. Notice I'm not putting my comb away or my shears away. I've got them palmed. And I did have somebody cut me once because their blades were open and they slid it up my arm. So that did not feel really great. And 6 stitches later. So be sure to not cut yourself or you guess that way by palming the shears. You will see other artists that flip them where they're down. I find that I just gonna poke myself or somebody else. So I just palm them. Basically, I've got my section of hair I'm gonna cut. I'm gonna transfer my comb into my other hand. Notice my wrist position is neutral. I want to do this. Honestly, truly, I do, but I am training myself not to. So I want to go in and cut this. So I have not put my shears down or my scissors down or my shears down. So that is palming my shears. Also, this is true about a razor too. If you're razor cutting, if you're combing with the razor down, you will slice a huge piece of hair off, which I did in a cutting class to only embarrass myself a lot. So make sure your razor, if you're razor cutting, is going up, okay? So that's really important. We talk about a razor next in this chapter here. I have to admit I don't do a lot of razor cutting. Always do razor cutting on wet hair. On dry hair, it shreds the cuticle and you'll hear it going, not a great thing. Usually also too, only one blade, one haircut. So you always want to start off with a really sharp razor. So do not, once you do the haircut, throw it away. Unlike the shears, which we cut on this side of the fingers, we're going to cut on this side of the finger. If you go in at a 90-degree angle, you hack off a ton of hair. If you go in parallel to the hair, you're kind of etching it out. Also, you've got the looseness, so that gives you a softer cut. Keith Urban's haircut looks like a razor haircut to me. These are 2 different types. We always have a featherweight razor on there. We do not use straight razors as cosmetologists. Believe me, and they will not cut you. I can go across my arm and not bleed, but believe me, it will shave as much hair off as a straight razor. And you can see there's my little fur just flew across the table. Okie dokie, so that will be sharp enough to clean up my hairline if I need to do that. So please, as Cosmos, do not use a straight razor in the salon. It is not part of your license, so do not do that. Please, 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 please. We talked about holding the razor there. We talked about handling the comb. I'm on 380. We talked about tension a minute ago, so tension on the hair is important. Keeping the same tension or the lack of tension in certain areas. Remember we talked about the ear, not putting a lot of tension there. So being tension and not tension. At some point, I know we're going to mention it, but I'll just mention it now. Notice the other day, I cut both the haircuts dry. So we dry cut sometimes, wet cut sometimes. I am not a water bottle guy. I do not wet the customer's hair down for the first time with a spray bottle. Half of it's dry, half of it's wet, half of it's somewhat wet. Guess what you get? Uneven. Also, I do not cut dirty hair. Dirty hair does not lay down right. So I'm a big person. Either I'm going to cut clean, dry hair, or I'm going to go shampoo my guest and then I'm going to cut it. I get a much better result. Other people will disagree with me. You know, we all agree to disagree, but those are my rules on that one. I talk about this a lot in classes, proper body position. That includes my customer as well as myself. I don't want my customer cross-legged. If I am doing a symmetrical haircut and her shoulders up, believe me, it's not going to be symmetrical. I don't want her slumped. I want everyone sitting up straight. I want their head position in the correct position for the haircut. A lot of people want to help you. Well, for certain haircuts, that's not helping. So touch their head, put their head where it belongs. Some people tilt a little bit. So make sure their body position is correct, but also your position is important. If you're staying in a stationary guide, you're going to stay stationary. If you're traveling, you're going to travel around. So your body position is essential too. I almost lunge in as I'm working. So my body position is working to there. One thing that happens with the hair is we tend to pull it towards us. So where we're standing is where we're pulling. If we need to be heading over here and we pull over here, we're going to have a problem. Okie dokie? So that's what's really important about standing and working in front of your sections or making sure you're staying in the correct placement. They talk about cutting on page 381. There are times you will cut above your fingers. You will tend to cut above your fingers in anything in the horseshoe when you're up like this. It's very, very difficult to cut palm to palm. So you will be cutting over here. My work wife always cuts on the top of her fingers, even down in this way. Is it wrong? No, it's her method of doing that. Usually I cut below my fingers, especially on my perimeter cuts like we talked about the other day. So I'm cutting below my fingers here. There's also a thing called cutting palm to palm, and I do that a lot. So basically, if I am standing on this side of the girl and I am elevating the hair, there is this palm. If I'm keeping my hand in neutral, my two palms are now facing together. So I go down and I will cut the hair. You can see my palms are facing. If I'm standing more on this side of the head, my hand will be this way with my fingers pointing down, and I will be cutting in an upward manner. My hands are still palm to palm. So that's important to know. And you're going to see that especially when we start cutting the 45-degree haircut and the 90-degree haircut. Okay? A couple other things. When we palm the shears, like we were talking about earlier, this takes all the tension off of here so I can comb it. And the last thing I really want to talk about on 382 before we break up the basic haircuts is cutting past our second knuckle. And we did talk about that in our demo the other day. If I cut past that second knuckle, I tend to cut right in between my fingers. It bleeds a lot and it's hard to stop and it's not fun. So I'm going to comb the hair, cut to the second knuckle, recomb, move my hand over, and cut again. If you do cut yourself with the texturizing shears, let me tell you, it really does hurt, and you're cutting a V shape in there, and it is not fun. So please, on the texturizers, really do be careful and don't cut past that knuckle. So that's kind of it for today. I think I covered quite a bit of material on our tools and all that. Keep on reading. Obviously, I think you can post and tell me things in the videos that you're watching. And am I doing good? Am I answering all your questions? I hope so. This has been really fun to do this. May I encourage all your student teachers, please come up and film a video. This is a very, very different experience, and it's been amazing doing it. So as a student teacher, I really encourage you to get your phone out, get your selfie stick on, do whatever you need to do, and film a class that you like to teach. I always say that to student teachers, film what you love because you're more passionate about it. Don't do stuff that's boring. But try that, guys, because this I can see is a wave of the future, and I'm the old guy, right? So this video recording and things like this for posterity, now we're going to have a library and all that. So student teachers, come on up here and try this. We'll help you out and all that. Jen's really good at this. Donna's really good at this. They're working with me because I'm struggling on the tech part. But anyways, thank you so much. Let me know how I'm doing. And I will see you next time. Bye.